All right, we are back with another 2 card review, continuing through Scarlet Witch's events. Yeah, they're both event cards. Continuing with Scarlet Witch's events, so I'm excited to dive back into this and talk a bit about these cards. These are just my opinions and my takes on these cards as we go through the different aspect cards that are out there. If you're new to this, I'll attach this to the playlist of all the older videos we're getting back into, so I'm really excited for it. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, I appreciate it. Make sure you follow along or hit subscribe, whatever it is. Leave a review. All that stuff really helps out the podcast channel. Let's go check out the first event card from the Scarlet Witch pack, Swift Retribution. All right, so Swift Retribution is a 1-cost event. It's an attack event on a justice card, right? So a card that will let you attack on justice. And this was a big thing for a while where they were having justice cards be like attacking cards, which was kind of interesting. But anyway, so yeah, attack, hero action, 1-cost event. The villain schemes deal 4 damage to the villain. Now, this was also a part of the whole toe-to-toe debacle. For those that were around on that was a whole thing. But this was one of the cards that could have theoretically worked with that. We're not going to get into it because they've changed the rules. It's different. Toe-to-toe works how it should now. But anyway, the idea of this card is actually kind of interesting. I don't use it a ton, right? I don't use it a ton. I've never used it for multiplayer, so I can't really say like, hey, I think this card would work really well in multiplayer. I feel like it wouldn't, right? Because 4 damage to have the villain scheme just doesn't feel worth it in multiplayer. But maybe it is. I don't know. But because the threshold would be so high, and if everyone's a hero, then like what's the difference of adding like a little more to the main scheme, right? So maybe, but 4 damage feels like so low, especially like a 3 or 4 player game, right? It just doesn't feel that high. So anyway, as far as solo goes, I use this now and again. I mess with this a little bit, and I like the idea of like if you have like what is it, counterintelligence? I think is the card where it's an upgrade that sits out there on the table, and you get to basically ignore 3 threat being put onto the main scheme. So it can either be during step 1 of the villain phase when you just put on threat, or it could be when the villain actually schemes and reveals a boost card. And if it's 5, right, you can reduce it by 3, so it's down to 2. So if you had like one of those cards out there, I feel like maybe this makes sense to like, okay, I have one of them in my hand and I have Swift Retribution. I want to play the one that's in my hand, but I think it's limit 1 per player, something like that, one per the table. So let's get the villain to clear that out basically, and then deal 4 damage to himself, and then we can put a new one in. Like there is certain situations where I can see that it working, but it's not. It's like not a card I really plan around, right? A lot of these events and stuff, I have rough ideas of what I want that card to do, right? This is with any event card in Marvel Champions. When I put an event card in my deck, I go, okay, the purpose of this card for me is to get around XYZ scenarios that I know are going to happen against this villain, against this modular set, whatever it may be. And Swift Retribution never feels like one of those cards, right? It never feels like, oh yeah, no, I love this scenario because the villain is so bad at scheming, and maybe that's the strategy. The villain's so bad at scheming and the main threat is so high that I'm just gonna have him keep punching himself in the face for 4 damage, right? I'm gonna keep allowing that. So that strategy has never been there for me, because if that was the case, honestly, my strategy would just be to flip down a ton, right? And then just set up big hits or big threat removals or whatever from that. So yeah, I've never leaned into the letting the villain do a thing so you can deal damage to them. They have cards like this in aggression that we said with toe to toe. I think protection has a card like this too, that heals you. Maybe I can't remember 100%. But anyway, I've never leaned into this, so I'm really interested. Especially, as you go down, hit the like button, hit subscribe, all that fun stuff. But leave a comment and let me know if you've ever like built around this card. Like I'm sure there's people that put it in their deck for funsies and there's like, oh, let me try it and see what it's like. And maybe you did something cool with it and that's neat. But like, did you ever build around this card? Did you ever have like a specific strategy for this card? Like that's what I'm kind of really curious about, to see if anyone was like that. I maybe. Maybe I'm not gonna say there's nobody that's like that, but it'd be interesting to hear more about that. So definitely let me know about that. Next card we got cover is a kind of a bonkers card, and it's Turn the Tide. It's a 0-cost event, attack response attack. After your hero thwarts and removes all threat from a scheme, deal 3 damage to an enemy. So this is kind of interesting, right? So you could just exhaust to remove 3 threat, right? Easy. And then you just play this card for free and you deal 3 damage to the enemy. Now, what kind of makes this card really interesting is somebody like a Miss Marvel, where you can exhaust Miss Marvel to recall cards. Turn the Tide is almost a staple in her card at this point, or her deck now. Not that you have to use it, but it's really nice. Is that you use some event card to clear the threat removal, because that's your hero thwarting. You play this card for free, deal 3 damage, exhaust Miss Marvel, get the card back, and then immediately play it out, because that's the same triggering condition. Like, you're fine doing that. So like stuff like that is really interesting. Past that, I haven't used Turn the Tide for a lot of other heroes. I'm sure there's ways to use it that are good. It makes sense, but the Miss Marvel game plan of using the card has always been the best to me. And the other thing too is I feel like this is a really good solo card and not a good multiplayer card. Again, your Justice player can probably remove a lot of threat, generally speaking, to help out the game. But to be able to constantly remove all the threat from a scheme is probably not happening as much in a multiplayer game, right? In solo game, it's really easy for me to keep it down at 0. In the multiplayer game, I could probably get to solo, but it's not always the most efficient thing, because again, we're kind of setting up bigger swings, generally speaking, versus like the smaller cards. So I'm not removing all the threat as much. Now, again, does that mean that this is a useless card in multiplayer? No, it's not useless. For me personally, I found that I was just not using it as much in multiplayer, because we were usually ending up with like 1 or 2 threat on the main scheme and being like, okay, that's fine. Or even with the side schemes, like there's fewer side schemes or whatever else that may happen. We're not playing this as much. Now, I do enjoy the card that, again, it's any scheme that you remove threat from, it works on. Like, it doesn't have to be the main scheme or whatever, right? It's just a scheme, and it deals 3 damage to an enemy, right? It doesn't have to be the villain or whatever. If you want to start working on minions, like, that works too. So I like the way that this card is worded and phrased for that, because I think that makes it more versatile. Anytime a card is more versatile, I think it adds longevity to that card and makes it a better card, because maybe we'll have more interactions with this card down the road. All right, if you're listening to this on the podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button. A ton of you have been following and subscribing to the podcast on different platforms recently, on Spotify and Apple. I've seen a lot. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. It's really, really cool. Hopefully these videos / audio talking heads convert well over onto that platform. I feel like it will. I feel like it will, because you don't always need to just see the card, because that's all we're seeing on the screen right now. It just, I tell you what the card is. So hopefully that's enough. But yeah, I appreciate all the support. And also, recently we've had a lot of members join the YouTube channel starting at 99 cents. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. 99 cents helps out the channel so much, you would not believe it. It absolutely changes the trajectory of this channel. It allows us to reinvest in things, allows us to change things. I know it doesn't seem like a lot of money, because you might go like, what's 99 cents? It makes a huge difference. Again, we've quipped about this before, that if everyone in this channel just did the 99 cent tier, we'd be doing this full time. Heck, if half the people on this channel did the 99 cent tier, we'd be doing this full time, right? So that's how much of a difference even something at that low of a membership level really helps the channel. So I really appreciate it. So anyway, hopefully you've been enjoying this series. We'll keep doing it. We'll keep pushing along, and I'll see you all next time.